final part to my level 2 first aid kit review. Thanks for coming along. I forgot to mention this. Here's some moleskin. It was in that side pocket to the left in its own plastic bag. This is the pre-cut, pre-formed Adventure Medical Kits brand moleskin. I've had mixed results with moleskin. It seems like anytime I've needed it in a hiking scenario, it kind of peels off my heel. I think if you apply it before you start hiking, you know you're going to have a hot spot. You're going to have your best results with it. If you've waited till your foot gets nice and steamy and hot, it doesn't adhere that well, even after using the alcohol pads or some of those cheesy pads I was telling you about before. However, I like the pre-cut moleskin variety here. I'm going to give that a whirl. I've used just plain old moleskin and cut it myself. And again, AMK Adventure Medical Kits has some really good packaging, and I cut the instructions out for someone other than myself if they need to know how to use the moleskin. Nice to use. That duct tape, riding right there currently, is also a good option for protecting your heel if you get a blister, or actually before you get a blister is when I recommend using duct tape on your heel, especially that Gorilla brand. Works pretty good. There's a couple things I forgot to mention. One is, as I was going through the pharmaceutical section, remember I pulled out that super glue? Don't think that the super glue goes in a specific compartment. Right now it's riding in here. And so it really isn't part of the pharmacy, so to speak. You're jamming stuff in, if you can, according to category, but basically in this particular carry case, wherever you can fit it. And you can generally still see it through the window. So pressing on, hey, here's some swabs, cotton variety, wooden cotton swabs that you can use to apply a variety of maybe the the iodine in a certain wound situation. Also to maybe extract something from the eye, and that's where we're going to go now. That's a good lead-in to our next topic, and that is eye dressings. And here we have an eye bandage. Let me just pan that up just a little bit. There we go. Pull that out. Pull that out. This is a dedicated eye dressing by Kendall. And I didn't mean to make it sound like Kendall was an off-brand. It's actually a pretty good brand. Everything I've ever used from them is good. It's an eye patch. So if you want to play pirate up there, you just might have to, depending on the eye wound. You got this. You could probably press into service a 2x2 inch gauze pad, as they're calling it here, all-purpose sponge if you wanted to. That would work as well. I like a dedicated eye pad because it's so lightweight and compact to carry. By the way, here's my 2x2 sponges. And some Telfa small variety, labeled of course. Same type of non-adherent Telfa type sponge. You can still crust into the wound like we talked about in previous parts of the video series. And you might have, if that Telfa does crust into the wound, you can actually drench it with some clean water, preferably water that you've boiled to sterilize it, and then let it cool down, obviously. And then if you had blood that was crusted into the Telfa, you could like pour it over, kind of soften it up, and then gently bring up the bandage. You can use that with any crusted bandage over the wound site. So these are the small sponges. You'll be amazed at how much you use this small size, by the way. This one right here. I use them a lot up there. And so eye patch. Also, I want to mention at this point what I call eye wash. I'm not talking about things that impress you, but I'm talking about flushing the eyeballs out. And it's important enough to me to carry a dedicated container of eye wash. You can see it's a sterile isotonic buffered solution. Big words. Basically, it's something that's designed to disinfect and clean the eye out. Now, this has a little squirter nozzle on it. I'm not going to expose it, but additionally, something I found that's very helpful, and I've used it an amazing amount of times, if I can extract it, is, and there's something else in there. Oh, I forgot I had that. Is an eye wash container. I just use a 35mm film container. Kind of hard to find nowadays because everyone uses digital cameras. You might be able to find some. I bought some in bulk off of eBay, and I sterilize it. I'll have to redo it before I use it. And then you put either some clean water in there. That works just fine. You could put some eye wash in there. Cup it over your big old eyeball. And keep your eye open while you do this and swish it around. Just rock back and forth, letting the liquid rinse out whatever got caught in your eye. Use this all the time. It's important enough where I include it in my level 2 first aid kit. And then you have an eye wash as a backup. See, so take some time to include that for your eye treatment if you need it. These are sting ampules, and notice that I doubled up on my space by placing them in the eye wash container. These are awesome. Sting ampules, 2% lidocaine, 1% menthol is what they say. And I've used them a lot, and they always come in handy. You saw my sting stick earlier in the kit review, and that works as well, but not as good as these. And also, by putting them in the container, I prevent them from being crushed and therefore activated. You with me? Cool. So eye wash container with some sting ampules in it. I wish I had room for more. You know, I only have, what, 4 sting ampules? But keep in mind, you guys have probably got the notion, and if so correctly, that this is pretty much designed to be a backcountry medical kit. It's an all-purpose tactical / backcountry medical kit. But again, I don't have unlimited space. I do not have unlimited room. Generally, it has to be light and compact enough to jam inside either a large internal frame or a large external frame backpack. That's my POU on this thing. So a lot of people go hog crazy and just say, you know what, I'm just going to throw this in there, I'm going to throw 15 of that, you know, 4 rolls of tape, put it in a huge old bag, and I'm good to go. And you are good to go, but perhaps not if you're going to be hiking that in to the backcountry. And generally people who make a kit that big, that heavy, do not have the intention of doing that. It's more of a home style or vehicular kit. This is something that my son Tactical Doodle turned me on to. It is a nasopharyngeal airway. If someone is jacked up in the mouth, they have some severe damage in the mouth and they cannot breathe for whatever reason through their mouth, maybe it's vomit, maybe it's blood, they still need to breathe to live. And one way you can do it, and one way that the EMTs, paramedics do, is by inserting the nasopharyngeal airway. And it goes, as the name indicates, through the nose. And you just lubricate it up. And there's the lube right there. It's kind of like KY jelly. Put that on there and just slip it down through the nasal passage. And so there is an unobstructed airway going into the victim so that they can breathe at least through one nostril. I'm debating whether to include 2. Remember, space is tight in my particular setup. They're made of latex. They should be able to bend and take it no problem and snap back to form. But it's a great inclusion into your level 2 kit. Kind of going over to maybe level 3 territory. Maybe not, but I'm including them for now. Down here we have yet another way to soothe an injured eye. Visine. A little mini container of Visine. That one's old, 5 years old. Have no intention of swapping it out either. Another container of betadine. That's that 10% Povidone-Iodine solution. And surgeons and doctors love this stuff. It's a great way to flush out a wound. Here's a larger container from my home kit. It's the same stuff. And there's different ways you could carry it. You might opt, if this is not enough for you, to go with a large transport tube. Kind of like you saw this in like part 1 or 2. This is that BandAid antiseptic wound rinse. All of these fluids serve the same purpose. They disinfect and they flush out the wound sites. Be careful, by the way, if you use these transport tubes on the lids, don't tighten those lids down very hard. I've learned if you do that, the stress will crack them around here and they'll leak. So you just barely want to put them on, and you'll be amazed that they'll seal, they will not leak. But don't screw the lids on tight at all. Betadine. See, I'd like to carry a container that big. There's just not enough room. I might make a larger container of betadine, maybe along the order of that transport tube you saw. Also, have a few plastic bags with you. Okay? Plastic bags of this variety. I have some others here. When you break into perhaps a package of your gauze, here's the one I didn't show you. Here's some more large sponges, all-purpose sponges, 4x4 inch variety. You might only use one in there, and yet you want to keep the other one waterproof. It's still serviceable, especially when you don't have unlimited supplies in the backcountry. You put it in your bag and you seal it up for future use, and that also saves you money as well. On this side of the kit, we get into a latex tourniquet. Now, all the things you've heard about tourniquet use come into play. It's probably your last resort to save someone's life. You know, I will raise the limb, direct pressure, maybe a pressure point, seeing if I can stop the bleeding that way. And let me make a little deviation. One thing I haven't shown you in the kit is quick clot. There's a couple reasons for that. I don't have quick clot in my level 2 kits because, one, it's very heavy. So it's extremely heavy. It's very expensive. And also, I'm kind of researching it still. I've been hearing that you can get somewhat of a clotting in your bloodstream with quick clot. I forget the term for that. I might annotate it. So I'm not sure I want to include it. And I've been able to stop bleeding in every other way. Quick clot to me would again be kind of like a tourniquet, kind of a last ditch way to stop bleeding. I would always go for the conventional direct pressure whenever I can using a sponge. If that doesn't work, then I'll use the other methods that I just mentioned. Last resort, maybe you would use quick clot. Research it. I'm not the expert on it. And then maybe a tourniquet if I had no other way. Okay, so I'm not going to get into any more philosophy than that because I don't think I'm qualified. Again, I'm not a medical professional and I don't want to dispense advice on that issue. Just don't want to do it. Latex gloves. The blue variety are stronger, and a lot of EMTs and paramedics like the blue ones better. I think I've got like two pair in there, and that's enough. When I'm working on my own family, my friends, people who I know do not have AIDS, I'm not really worried about wearing the gloves. However, when I work on someone I don't know their background, where they're coming from, gloves come on, and I'll wear them accordingly. So, what do you know? That is the kit. Now, there's some other things that I forgot about. Let me roll the kit up, and I'm going to show you again what it looks like, and it's rolled up form. I got to summarize the video in throw in a couple other thoughts before we end it. I'll join the two clips here in a sec. Okay, there it is again, Nutnfancy's Level 2 First Aid Kit. I call it a Brigade Level First Aid Kit for the reasons I've told you. Hey, I forgot to show you a couple items. I intentionally left them out so I can show you them now. One is a little container of Germ-X or Purell hand sanitizer. That goes inside, and it was in there. Previously, I had such a container in a plastic bag, and as you can see, the container failed, and it basically splooged all over inside. Yet another reason why you put things that are susceptible to such an incident in a plastic bag. It localizes the damage. Purell is nice. Yet another way we can sanitize our hands. Maybe some of the instruments we need to use. Also, I forgot to show you, I have Ipecac syrup. This induces vomiting in case someone takes in some poison. If there's some small children in the group, not all poisons do you want to induce vomiting on. It just depends on what it is. If it's caustic, I don't think they want you to induce vomiting. Refer to a competent first aid manual and it'll tell you accordingly, and there's also some instructions on the back. This is kind of going into a home first aid kit item, but it was so small and relatively lightweight, I include it in the level 2. If I go backpacking with the kit though, I generally leave this behind. Also, I forgot to show you, you probably already saw it, is this container of hydrogen peroxide. There is some controversy on whether you should use hydrogen peroxide. Some say that it's damaging to the living cells, that it is kind of caustic to them. I've had good luck with it. I have noticed that it is somewhat harsh to the wound area. However, I still include it because it is a great way to sterilize the tools and also some minor cuts and abrasions. I don't think it damages it too much. I think the medical community kind of goes back and forth on their thoughts on hydrogen peroxide. For now, it's still riding in the level 2 kit. Again, I'm always open to new and better ways to do something, and maybe what I'll do eventually is just switch over my hydrogen peroxide to betadine and use the weight for betadine. That would actually be a pretty smart swap out, I think. Might do it. There you have it. I think I included most things, although if I forget it, I'll put it in annotation. Now, summarizing with philosophy. This is a level 2 kit. As I just mentioned earlier in this segment, it is designed primarily for backcountry use and portability while still retaining a relatively broad capability with a moderate amount of depth. However, this is primarily designed as it currently stands for rule of law use. In other words, emergency services are available and functioning. Therefore, my job as a first responder is to stabilize the patient and get them to better and more competent care than I can provide. That even includes backcountry. If someone is really jacked up, guess what? Expedition over, adventure over. Let's portage them out, get them in the hands of someone who can help. If it's really bad, let's see if someone has a sat phone, and we'll get a helicopter to come where we are, and that would be another option. Just because you have a first aid kit like this, and I don't want anyone to misunderstand, doesn't mean that we are a scanner buddy looking for opportunities to use it. A scanner buddy is someone who listens to the scanner and races off to all the accidents and emergencies within their city to see if they can render assistance. No, stay out of the way of the professionals, the paramedics, the firemen, the ambulance crews who know what they're doing and are trained in it, and they have a ton more capability. A level 2 first aid kit comes into play when there is no one else to help. Again, hearkening to a story of first aid experience. There was no one up there. It was just us, my girlfriend and I, handling that fatal accident. That's when a level 2 will come into play. Also, of course, backpacking in the backcountry. No one else is around. It's just you. That's when you need a level 2 kit. Now, expanding into a WROL situation when emergency services are no longer available, then there is some inclusions we should include in our kit. And by doing so, this is probably not going to be a big enough container. We might want to opt for something larger where we can put some more antibiotics, we can put some more rolls of tape, some deeper stocking of our medical sponges and things that we're going to need. That's kind of a different POU when you go into WROL. And it basically boils down, just like I've said in many other situations in the Nutnfancy project, it boils down to firepower versus mobility. Here we have a 4.5–5 pound medical kit that is small enough to be placed into a backpack by a group member, or definitely within a vehicle, and taken with you. If you expand it to include a small duffel bag, you might opt just to leave it because it's too big, it takes up too much room. And if you show up with a small duffel bag and you tell someone who knows what they're doing in the backpacking world, said, hey dude, you got to backpack this up, they're going to look at you and go, I ain't packing that up, especially on a really long, steep hike, which I've taken like 10 miles in. It's a killer. Nobody wants to do it. So this is the best blend that I've come up with. It is the level 2 kit that I've just reviewed with you in 5 parts. The best thing that I know of now. Subject to change as new technologies show up. I'm going to try to improve it as it goes. If you're good at your first aid skills, you generally will not need a manual. I didn't show a manual in there. That's because I feel fairly ready to apply everything that you've seen in the kit. If you are not to that level, I recommend you include a first aid manual. There's several ones out there. Go to Amazon.com. You find some there. And I make it small and light, something that can fit in the interior pocket of this medic roll or whatever container you've chosen for your medical kit, and bring it with. Also, space and weight, again, are a primary limitation on my current kit, and I just don't want to add the weight. Once I expand it, or if I decide to go full-on WROL medical capability, then a book like this, where there is no doctor, written by David Werner, is a great inclusion. And this was written for medical applications in the third world that they have no doctor. And they tell you how to do surgical procedures, and they tell you about nutrition, healing up, natural cures, and all the things, not all the things, but a lot of things which have been lost in our modern day society. This is a reference book for the Nutnfancy family in the home medical kit. Great thing to have. Practice makes perfect. The more you use your first aid kit, the better you're going to become with it. You're going to get familiar with its contents, how to use them appropriately in different situations, and it might take some creativity as well. That you'll say, hey, I don't have this, but maybe I can, I have a sucking chest wound, so maybe I can cut a panel out of the plastic bag, preferably that Mylar one I showed you inside, and then I'll use my tape, leave the bottom end open. Now I can basically treat that sucking chest wound. So think creatively with the materials that you have, and you will get better. I mean, I've treated guys and gals with my first aid kits where after I was done with them, they opted not to go to the emergency room. Not that I'm some medical guru, but I take pride in giving some quality first responder care. You can tell a lot about an individual and what they know about first aid, in my opinion, by the way they dress a wound. And just watching them. Is it a sloppy job? Is it neat? Are they taking great care not to introduce infection into the wound site? And if they are, you can tell. You can tell by the wrap job if it's a quality job or not. And that's what I strive for, and you should too. So that's it. The Level 2 First Aid Kit by Nutnfancy. It is the blend of firepower and mobility for the best capability that I can take with me on all of my adventures. Don't go sprinting to the intersections trying to beat the ambulance with your kits. Let the professionals do their job. But the day may come when you look left, you look right, and there's no one else but you that has a kit like this. And in that case, guess what? You are the doctor, and you're the one that's going to handle it that day. Thanks so much for coming along. This is Nutnfancy signing off after a 5-parter discussing the Level 2 Brigade First Aid Kit. I'm out of here. See ya.
It's the weekend, and I know that you're free. So pull on your jeans and come on out with me. I need to have you near me. I need to feel you close to me. I need to have you near me. I need to feel you close to me.